At long last, it has finally happened. After months of teetering on the fine line between being allowed to race in F1 and being a fugitive, it happened. My absolute GOAT Kevin Magnussen finally received a race ban following penalty points he accumulated during yesterday's Italian Grand Prix. But how exactly did we get to this point? How did we reach a point where K-Mag became the first driver to get banned for a race since Roman Grosjean over 10 years ago? Well, to figure that out, we'll have to go through the past 12 months, as that's how long you have until a penalty point expires. Now, what's funniest about all this is that around the 2023 US Grand Prix, which was almost a year prior to this ban, Kevin Magnussen was one of a few drivers in Formula 1 that had 0 penalty points to his name. A clean slate. Since the introduction of the penalty point system and the subsequent rule that states that if you get 12 within a year, you're banned, no one has actually gotten banned from the sport, as no one has ever come close to getting that many. The driver that actually came closest to this was Pierre Gasly, who escaped what seemed like a fate-sealing accident during the dying laps of the 2023 Australian Grand Prix, in which a misguided move saw him take himself out and his teammate Esteban Ocon. This crash caused a safety car that ended the race prematurely. The race actually ended so prematurely that Haas driver Nico Hülkenberg, who was on for a podium based on his on-track position, ended up getting shuffled back to P7 due to the rules behind what sector the field was in when the crash took place. Now, what could have been an amazing 15 points on Haas's season tally from this race ended up being only 6, as Hülkenberg was credited with a P7 finish. In turn, what relevance does this have to our story? Well, in 2023, Haas finished the Constructors' Championship in last place, 4 points off Alfa Romeo, 13 points off Alfa Tauri, and 16 points off Williams. Now it's safe to say, had Hülkenberg got a podium that day in Australia, things would have been way different where the Constructors' Championship was concerned. Coming off the back of that last place finish, there was much doom and gloom at Haas, with new team boss Ayao Komatsu setting very low expectations for the team and warning fans and pundits alike not to expect much. A decent showing followed at the season opener in Bahrain, with Magnussen finishing just outside the points ahead of key midfield rivals, particularly the two Alfa Tauris. That's what leads us to Jeddah, the site of Kevin's first accrued penalty points of 2024. While going wheel-to-wheel with Alex Albon following an early safety car restart, Magnussen veered into Albon's path, resulting in contact and damage for the Williams driver. Kevin would be handed down a 10-second penalty and 3 penalty points on his license for the incident. However, with his teammate Nico Hülkenberg running in the points and acknowledgement of the fact that his charge for points was effectively ended with the mistake, Kevin decided to sacrifice the rest of his race to keep back any driver that had a chance of catching Nico, and he succeeded at that, even at the expense of Yuki Tsunoda's sanity. Magnussen would even finish the race an unlikely P12 as Hülkenberg crossed the line in P10, the first point of Haas's season. Given Haas's last place finish and poor expectations at the start of the year, it's easy to see why such caution was thrown to the wind, as the team was in a situation where points were perceived to be an unlikely occurrence. However, come China, the source of Kevin's second accrued set of penalty points, the stakes were not as high. An overtake attempt on Yuki Tsunoda for P13 completely failed and resulted in an avoidable collision that put Tsunoda out of the race. Kevin would be awarded 2 more penalty points for this incident, bringing his total for the season at 5. Kevin's first batch of penalty points came in Jeddah, a race he sacrificed to help his teammate Nico Hülkenberg. Well, Kevin's next batch of penalty points would come for the same reason. During the sprint race at Miami, a great start saw both Haas's running P7 and P8. Hülkenberg was ahead of Kevin, who had faster cars in his rearview mirrors, trying to snatch away the last 2 points paying positions from him and Nico. In an attempt to guarantee points for Haas, Kevin threw absolute caution to the wind in his defense against Hamilton, going off the track on numerous occasions to ensure he could stay ahead of Lewis and cost him valuable time, so even if he were to pass him, he'd have no chance at catching Hülkenberg. And what do you know? His plan succeeded, as Nico Hülkenberg would bag a 7th place finish, and with it, 2 more points for Haas's constructors' efforts. Alas, Kevin's antics resulted in a whopping 3 extra penalty points, which, when added to his 5, meant that he was at 8 for the season, just 4 points away from a race ban. With this on his mind, it was imperative that Kevin kept a clean record to prevent himself from missing a race, which would serve to be arguably the lowest point in his near decade-long F1 career. Unfortunately, Kevin continued his balls to the wall mentality, aggressively attempting a switchback on the Williams of Logan Sargent, which resulted in him taking the young American out of his home Grand Prix. This incident resulted in Kevin being handed down 2 more penalty points, bringing his tally to 10, just 2 away from a race ban. Now, it's worth noting that Kevin was potentially on the chopping block at Haas even before this penalty point speed run. Following impressive FP1 outings for the team in 2023, coupled with an amazing P7 on his impromptu Ferrari debut at that year's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, coincidentally the very race Kevin's reign of terror began, Oliver Bearman was seen as the favourite to join the American team in 2024. Luckily for Magnussen, Nico Hülkenberg announced that he would be joining forces with Sauber in 2025, meaning the team could sign Bearman and still have Magnussen for next year. However, Monaco changed everything. It's worth noting that once a driver gets banned for 12 or more penalty points, their points are reset following them serving the ban, allowing their tally to reflect a tabula rasa mind state. It appears as though Kevin was no fan of the cold Canadian Grand Prix weather and saw Monaco as his opportunity to have the perfect excuse to miss the race and spend the weekend somewhere warmer. One can only assume his plan was to ensure he left the Monaco Grand Prix banned from Formula 1. It's the only plausible theory that can justify this lap 1 collision with Sergio Perez, one that resulted in a massive crash going up the hill that even took out his teammate Nico Hülkenberg. Alas, to the shock of many, the stewards deemed it a racing incident, and Kevin Magnussen would still be a legal F1 driver come Canada, a race where he arguably put down his best drive of the season so far, with a splendid stint on wets early, seeing him rise through the field, only for that hard work to be undone by a very slow pit stop for dries. Any ambitions of Magnussen remaining at Haas were put into serious doubt following Monaco. Not because of his attempt to reduce the Principality to rubble on lap 1, but because of another assassination attempt that took place later that same lap by one Esteban Ocon. To find out what that's all about, you can watch this video right here in the top right hand corner of the screen. The bottom line is, following this clash with Gasly, Ocon and Alpine announced that they would be parting ways, lining him up for a potential switch to Haas if the team saw the need to sack Magnussen. Anyways, yeah, it happened. Bearman and Ocon were announced for 2025, leaving Magnussen to be a free agent with potentially no seat in the sport next season, a fate he has seemingly accepted. Come the Italian Grand Prix, Kevin Magnussen had been on a streak of clean races, as he kept his nose clean as best as he could to remain in the sport. Unfortunately, Kevin could only escape the race ban for so long. In a race that saw Hülkenberg being the first Haas driver to drive recklessly, plowing into and taking out Yuki Tsunoda in his best K-Mag Chinese Grand Prix impression, Kevin would stand as the sole Haas car that could fight for points. Before the race hit halfway though, Magnussen would lock up his brakes entering a chicane while dueling with Pierre Gasly. This caused him to make contact with Gasly and causing both drivers to run off the road before recovering. Gasly would suffer light damage from the clash, and Kevin was handed a 10-second time penalty for the incident, but still pushed hard throughout the race to snatch a P10 finish at the end by less than 2/10 at the line once the penalty was applied. A joyous moment for Kevin, who scored his first points since the Austrian Grand Prix, quickly turned into the biggest L he had ever taken, as the stewards applied 2 penalty points for the clash, the 2 that would bring his tally to 12 and result in him being banned from the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Now, Kevin's ban is poetic for a few reasons. One being that of all the incidents for him to gain pen points this season, this was the one that was without doubt the least egregious. A simple lockup was all the stewards needed to rid the sport of Magnussen come Baku. The other reason that makes it so interesting is the mere fact that it was a similar incident committed by Ocon in Monaco that led to his sacking and subsequent call to replace Kevin himself. Looking back now, while some of Kevin's pen points were scored through calculated chaos, others were scored through chaos without any mathematics at all. The clash with Sargent was simply just poor driving. Same can be said about China with Tsunoda. It's unprovoked incidents like these that causes a portion of fans to believe that Kevin Magnussen was past his best and wasn't deserving of a seat in F1 anymore. And one would think the sheer calamity caused in Monaco would have served as the dagger, only for it to be a simple lockup and slight contact into a chicane at Monza that ended up doing the deed. You see, Kevin Magnussen may be seen as a daredevil, a reckless wildebeest, a loose cannon if you will, but personally, I see him as a hero, a loyal dog, one willing to put his entire credibility and image on the line to help his team score even the measliest of points. Kevin, in pursuit of getting the best possible finish for Haas, eventually racked up the first penalty point related ban in the history of Formula 1. Kevin Magnussen may be out of a ride come 2025, but his grit and determination to help his team is one that many drivers are unable to reflect. Haas and Kevin have gone down as one of the longest partnerships in the history of the sport, and Kevin did what he could to repay the team for sticking by him all these years. And keep in mind, this isn't me saying that this is the ideal way to help your teammate. Surely not. Fernando Alonso didn't have to resort to these measures to help Esteban Ocon win the 2021 Hungarian Grand Prix. Again, watch the video in the top right corner. But given the real situation that is an uncertainty of points week by week, one that Kevin has had to live with pretty much his entire Haas career, bar maybe 2018, he did what he could to secure them for the team because he knows that nothing in this sport is guaranteed, especially not for Haas. As promising as things started out in 2023, they finished that season last in the points through no fault of the drivers. Things like this really change your approach in trying to secure a points finish. Things like this helped him develop selflessness. Selflessness that I think will be rewarded in the form of a seat at one of the top teams in Formula 1. Hear me out, folks. By showing unwavering loyalty to Haas, there is no doubt in my mind that Ferrari will see Kevin's determination, rid themselves of either Charles Leclerc or Lewis Hamilton, and run Magnussen the second seat, one that he can use to usurp the poor sap that remains in the seat next to him. From there, Kevin will use the 2025 Ferrari seat to become the Formula 1 World Champion, and will bow out of the sport in a Rosberg-esque announcement days later to chase his real goal in life in 2026, joining the Pratt Miller Corvette team in the GTD Pro class of the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship and winning endurance races in a Corvette just like his pappy, Jan Magnussen. You don't believe me? Well, guess what? You don't have to. All I'll say is, Pratt Miller didn't just announce a deal with Haas Automation for nothing. But I'll let you sheep continue to live in your delusion, yes? Listen, this is Kevin's world, and you're all just living in it. But that's just a problem for you people, not me, as there's no world I'd rather live in. My name is Intern, I talk wheel, and thanks for watching.